and welcome to Ringgit Cents Plus. I'm Azaria Tagaya and you're watching our first episode for 2019. It's a new year and for parents, many would have already spent a lot of money over the last few weeks in getting their children ready for school. School supplies, daycare fees, uniforms, and even enrichment fees. The list seems endless. So how much should parents put aside each month for their kids? And how do you balance it with other needs? Well, we spoke to a financial planning expert, and this is what he has to say. According to Felix Neo, a licensed financial planner at Wealth Vantage Advisory, the ideal amount parents should set aside for their children varies depending on parents' priorities. However, he does offer some general guidelines.
I would say anywhere between 10 to 20%, at the most maybe 30% of your disposable income, you can actually set aside for the child. But anything beyond that, I think is a little excessive, right? Because you really need to, number one, make sure you can, have enough money to spend for your living expenses today. But you must be able to also put aside, money for investments, because this is meant for your future self, if you like. So you must be able to have that discipline, right, to make sure that you have funds available for today, as well as socking it away, if you like, and growing it through investments.
You probably know by now of the controversy of graduates who are facing difficulty paying off their student debts. If you want to avoid your child getting into debt before they even graduate, start an education fund for them today. Where do you start, and what are the best investment options for an education fund for your child? Felix says parents shouldn't take too long to think about it.
Start somewhere, better than to consider taking 1 year or 2 years evaluating options that are available in the market. There's no need for you to do all of that. Just start something easy. Some people might want to go through, for example, a PTPTN savings, the SSPN savings. That's one route, right? Obviously, that's a good, vehicle, especially for the tax relief purposes. So it was 6,000 last year tax relief. This year, 2019, it's going to be 8,000. So that's great. But the truth of the matter is that if you are only putting money into the SSPN savings, where the dividend rate historically has been about 4%, it's going to be quite difficult for you to achieve your targeted savings goal for education.
Besides PTPTN, the next best thing is unit trust funds.
So you can start with some unit trust portfolios if you like, or you can buy direct shares. Those who have the means might want to look at property investments. You could go all the way to foreign properties as well. So the options are plenty in that sense. But for those who don't have that much at this point in time or as a start, then just start with something simple. Unit trust portfolios you can start with as little as 1,000 ringgit, and every month you can put $100 or $200, and as your income rises, you can actually increase that. There are certain things that you have to be mindful for unit trust, because it's not all low risk at the end of the day, right? If you go into equity funds, there are ups and there are downs as well. So when it comes to unit trust investments, number one, pay attention to the cost of investments, right? Because if you were to go through certain channels to purchase your investments, your unit trust, it can cost you anywhere between 5 to 6% sales charge. So pay attention to the cost. First thing. Second thing is, when you're investing in unit trusts, a portfolio of unit trust funds, don't forget it is not just buy and hold and do nothing until you want the money back, because you need to pay attention to the performance, right? I like to call that active performance management, where you are looking at your portfolio, you're tracking it, and if there is a reason to rebalance your portfolio, you do that. If there is a reason to switch funds, right, or restructure your portfolio, you do that. If there's an opportunity to take profit, you also do that. If there's an opportunity to reinvest your profit because the markets have come down, you must be able to do that. So don't just buy unit trusts blindly, right? Make sure that after purchasing, you take active performance management in order to get better investment returns.
Besides unit trusts, there are also those who choose to invest in properties and buying stocks. Felix says that the downside in investing in property is that it is not as easy to sell compared to unit trusts or stocks when you do need the money.
If for whatever reason you don't want the property anymore, can you just sell it immediately? The answer is not really, unless it's a fire sale, right? So property investments are good long-term investments that can actually be used to fund child education. However, be mindful of the risks involved, right? Because many new investors in properties today, what's happening is that the loans that they have to pay, right, the mortgage on the loans that they have to take is likely going to be higher than the rental income. So what it means is that they're actually using their monthly cash flow to support the repayment. So it's all good if the person, the investor, the father or the mother is able to continue to do that. However, let's say if job security becomes a problem, if the father or the mother loses a job, is retrenched and all that, so how are they going to continue to pay, right? It's different for the other investments that you had mentioned, for example, shares or unit trusts, because shares or unit trusts, if you can't afford to put in anymore, you can just stop. Nothing's going to happen. There is no loan on it.
Felix adds that parents should also prioritize getting insurance for their child when they can afford it.
If you were to ask me what kind of insurance does a young child need, I would say try and prioritize the medical cards if possible. Why is that the case? Simply because sometimes the child may develop some kind of medical conditions as they grow up, right? And you don't want that to be a pre-existing condition for them later on in life. So it's a good idea to have a medical card. Now, of course, depending on the type of profile of the client that we're talking about, if the cost of a medical card is a little too much for them to bear, then my suggestion is very simple. At that juncture, depend on your company benefits. So what it means is that when you're looking for a job, do pay attention to company benefits as well, right? Then, for those who may have a little bit more funds set aside, then you might want to look at, very simple PA, personal accident type of insurance. But you can't buy much for children because at the end of the day, insurance companies won't want to take on such risks, too much of it. Then for those who have a little bit more funding, you can look at, for example, critical illness coverage as well.
The rise in the minimum wage to 1,100 ringgit is good news for low-wage earners, but it also raises the cost of doing business for others. So one of its unintended causes is that it raises the cost of running a daycare. After the break, we look into why daycares are raising their fees. Meanwhile, if you want to share the interview you just watched, go to our Facebook page or find us on YouTube. See you in a bit. Welcome back to Ringgit Cents Plus. You're still with me, Azaria Tagaya. For working parents, finding someone reliable to take care of your young child is very important. That's why it's crucial that you send your child to a registered daycare. However, many don't realize that many of the staff who work at daycare centers are paid the minimum wage. With the government raising the minimum wage to 1,100 ringgit, many daycare providers are already raising their fees in order to cope with the rise in cost. We spoke to the president of the Association of Registered Childcare Providers Malaysia to find out what parents should know. According to the Association of Registered Childcare Providers Malaysia (PPBM) President Nursheila Abdullah, parents can expect an increase of between 10 to 30% this year as childcare providers struggle to keep up with the minimum wage and higher operational costs.
We know that the operational charges are quite expensive. So a lot of the centres has been charging below than 300, and we know that it will not sustain if we are looking at quality care and all that. And back to requirement of minimum wages. So if we are charging like 300 ringgit per child, then we will not be able to comply with that minimum wages. But again, I think the minimum wages as an employee, they have their rights. It is their rights, and we have to. Now, what people doesn't really see, the public doesn't really see, is the hidden costs that we have to cover. We still have to pay our EPF for our staff. We still have to pay SOCSO for our staff. Besides that, we need to send our childcare providers for additional training, because it's not just having KAP will be better. That will be just a basic thing which will qualify them to be a registered childcare provider.
One of the most crucial aspects in childcare provision that requires proper training is how to take care of infants. The right and proper care not only needs educational input, but also correct practical implementation. Also, training in how to administer first aid help for children.
These are the hidden costs that people don't see. People think we are just paying rental, we are just paying for the makan, we are just paying, but those training, wages, food for staffs, even some centres, they still provide homes, provide house or hostel for the childcare provider, because these are the costs they look at. So that is why I've been saying that at least those who are charging below 400, I think there would be an increment between 10 to 30%. So it depending to the operators, because back to the locality where they are staying, what are so they have to also look into their costing.
In this respect, PPBM advises its members to discuss with parents about all aspects of childcare which is provided at the centres, so that parents understand what they are actually paying for, as well as ensure that the price they are paying is equally matched with quality service.
Now, what we are fighting for, PPBM is fighting for, is to give the rights and to make our childcare provider to receive what is entitled to them. Okay, and if you see along the line also, a lot of childcare centre, we are having turnover of staff, because of course if I have already got qualification and all that, if I don't get my minimum salary, I might as well work in a factory or somewhere else which I can gain more incentive or whatever, you see. And most our childcare provider, they are doing their own CSR by like, okay lah, just close one eye, never mind, we will provide extra this, extra that. They are even charging only 250 plus. They are providing the milk, the pampers, even powder and shampoo for the child.
Sheila also offers some tips for parents who want to get the full picture in what they are paying for when it comes to childcare. Going through the provided checklist ensures you and your child is sufficiently covered.
Refer back to the infographic which has been launched by our TPM recently. So the parents should look at the infographic and see what are the quality things that they have to look at. First, they have to look at that the childcare centre is registered. Registered not with SSM or PBT and all that, meaning they must see the license from the JKM. Okay. Number two, they should see what kind of activity the program the centre is providing. All right. Please go inside. Bring your child along, not just calling them and ask like, how much is the fee? You know, I'm looking, because you need to see the environment. Is it child-friendly environment? Is it safe environment for the children? Because sometimes when you walk in as a parent, I think you and your child will get the vibration like, oh, I think this place. That's why you must always give yourself, I mean the childcare centre and the parents must give themselves time period that how long should I understand what is the procedure going on in the centre.
We're going for a short break. After this, we take a look at insurance options for your children. Meanwhile, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube, where you can learn more about personal finance or share the interviews that you've watched today. Stay tuned. Back with me, Azaria Tagaya, on Ringgit Cents Plus. If you just joined us, we're looking at the cost of raising kids. Now, as parents, many will know that getting your child insured is very important. Children do get sick, and it can be quite costly. So what type of insurance should you get for them? Do they need life insurance, or is medical insurance sufficient? We asked an expert at comparison website Ringgit Plus about what parents should know when picking an insurance plan for their children. According to Lucas Oy, Director of Insurance at Ringgit Plus, parents should be looking to get at least a medical card for each child to cover the basics.
I would say the minimum that a parent should be thinking about for their child when it comes down to medical coverage is probably around 150 ringgit a month, if you can afford that. That ensures that your child gets the basic and medical coverage, as well as a little bit of life and critical illness.
When getting a medical card, ask what it covers. It's pretty obvious. The less you pay, the less it covers. So be aware of what you're paying for.
It all comes down to affordability. The most important thing is to get a medical coverage. The cheaper medical cards typically offer less coverage levels than the more expensive ones. So if you can afford the more expensive one, I would suggest going for the one that covers you for any medical issue. The cheaper ones typically have lots of exclusions or a lot of very limited coverage on treatment. So do be aware of this if you can only afford a cheaper medical card. Typically for medical card coverage, two or three important parts of it is the annual limit and the lifetime limit. So annual limit is how much you can claim on the medical card every year, and lifetime is for the lifetime of the policy. The second thing that's important is make sure that the medical card covers for a lot of outpatient benefits. So, if you need to attend hospital for just a day treatment, that is also covered. And the third thing is to ensure that the medical card is not a co-insurance product, because a co-insurance product means that you have to fork up maybe 5–10% of the bill. I think the majority of medical cards now are fully paid rather than co-insurance. Another part that's important for medical coverage is also your room and board. So what this is how much the insurance policy will pay for you to be admitted for each night being in hospital. This will typically range from 150 ringgit a night to 300 or 350. There are other policies that cover for you as charged. So whatever the cost of staying overnight at a hospital, the insurance policy will pay.
Try to get coverage for your child as early as possible. Even if your child seems completely healthy now, they could develop a medical condition later on. And once that happens, purchasing medical insurance won't cover existing health conditions.
If you are diagnosed with a previous illness or a previous critical illness, typically you will not be allowed to, you won't be able to make a claim for the policy. So if you're diagnosed with, say, cancer or with any heart problems, it will be very difficult for you to actually get a policy. So I suggest trying to get medical coverage as early as possible.
Read up on the exclusion list of things that the policy will not cover. For example, self-inflicted wounds and congenital birth defects are some of the things that insurance policies usually won't cover.
For specific parents who are expecting, certain exclusions include how the baby was conceived, such as artificial insemination. Typically, this is not covered under medical coverage.
We asked Lucas this question. What if your employer already covers you and your family with insurance? Which medical card should you use first when you're checking in your child at the hospital? Your employer's insurance or your own personal insurance?
I would probably go with the employer first, but sometimes the employer medical card doesn't cover very high coverage. So the important thing is to know what your employer is covering you for. and then buy additional coverage on top of your employer medical card. You obviously can't claim on both at the same time for the same issue. However, if one is not enough, you can use the other one to top up the balance of, say, treatment in a hospital.
Insurance coverage can even start even before the child is born, as some insurance policies cover the pregnant mother and unborn child.
There are specific pregnancy or lady care whereby while you're still pregnant, you can purchase additional coverage for your unborn baby. I think this is really important because you never know what's going to happen when you give birth. So it's important to have this coverage if you can afford it, such that if your child is born with an issue or a problem and needs to be admitted early in life, either in a high dependency ward or a intensive care unit, it's important to make sure that you don't struggle to pay for your bills for your child to get covered by the hospital.
At the Ringgit Plus website, parents can browse the policies available in Malaysia and find something that suits their needs. Once they find one, all they need to do is click Apply and fill in the information, and an insurance agent will contact you. Medical insurance is still a very personal thing, so it's best to speak to the insurance agent face-to-face and discuss your needs. Well, we hope that the interviews we shared today will be useful for parents in budgeting their monthly finances. Be smart about how you spend and manage your money so that you too can teach your children about managing their money as they grow up. If you want to learn more about personal finance, we have many other stories on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Azaria Tagaya signing off. See you next week, and remember, invest and save wisely.